Shabbat Shalom, everybody. This is Rabbi Stephen, Rav Shmuel with you, Rashbi. And Shabbat Shalom a little early. I know I like to get these a little early. Well, little OCD kind of compensates for my ADHD. Try to get things done, make sure that you're well informed. And, it's really interesting. You read a lot in the Talmud and various other Jewish sources that people are supposed to study the Torah. So being a rabbi for me, the one, yeah, of course, I love studying Torah. I love studying Talmud. Involved in reading Kabbalah right now. But to me, the important thing is learning so I can teach. I get very excited when I learn something new or see something that I find interesting because I just can't wait to share it with people. That's, just kind of how I am, how I feel. So, and that's why I like to do these. And I've gotten some comments, from people locally, from people on YouTube. And of course, thank you for listening and watching. And, I love the feedback. So let's talk a little bit about we'll get to Torah in a minute, but let's talk about and I don't really know what to call them. Are they secular holidays? They're not religious holidays, but they're particular to Israel and they're particular to the world. So last Tuesday was Yom HaShoah, the day of the catastrophe. And we observe that as to remember the Holocaust. Now, we know that in this day and age, there are a lot of people that deny the Holocaust. And, the reason they do that is very, very simple. They're anti Semitic, they don't like Jews, and they're looking for reasons that they can sell as valid ways to say, oh, no, I'm just exercising my freedom of speech, etc. But there's really an ulterior motive to it. So one of the things we do is, we like to highlight people that have either been through the Holocaust or have maybe secondhand experience. That is, their parents went through the Holocaust and they can talk about it. And this way we remember, and the Holocaust deniers are basically put in their place as best as can be done. And, as usual, I'd like to commend the Holocaust March of Remembrance Committee, the Holocaust Memorial down in the Murrieta Temecula area. Murrieta, California is doing a wonderful thing. They're looking to put in a Holocaust memorial that's going to be in the same vicinity in a town square as the World War II memorial, and they kind of fit. Um, so that way we remember it, we validate it, we know that people that are denying it are doing it because they're ulterior motive. Now, this upcoming week, we also have on Tuesday and Wednesday, we have Yom HaZikaron and Yom HaAtzmaut. We have Jewish Israeli Memorial Day and Israel Independence Day. And their Memorial Day, of course, honors those that have participated in the fight to keep our ancient land, and also in the idea that we now have our land back. I know people say, well, there's a modern Israel, there's an ancient Israel. Folks, my opinion, it's all the same. It's all the same. It's just a different time. We do things a little bit differently, and that's the way it is. So, speaking of doing things differently, let's go to this week's portion, which again is another double portion. And as I've explained before, but it's always good to refresh that there are certain very specific portions in the Torah that are doubled up. It's not like they pick random. They say, well, this is a regular year. It's got 4 weeks less than leap year where we add the extra Adar. So we have to double up on some parshas, well, let's double up on these, let's set it. You know, Portions are picked for a very specific reason. So last week, Tazria Mitzora talked about skin blotches. Hope you've had enough for a year. I don't think we're going to revisit that for a while. This week, we have the two portions doubling up, Acherei Mot, after the death, and Kiddushim, holiness. And there's a lot of commandments in here. So being that we're in triennial year one, let's highlight the first part of this double portion, which basically talks about Yom Kippur. Now, the rest of it is a bunch of seemingly sundry random commandments, but they all kind of fit together. There's always a flow that goes. And you look for it and you say, well, we know that the Torah is not random. It's not like, well, let's put this here, let's put this there. Everything follows. It may not be in chronological order, but it's in the order of importance related to the history of what we now call Judaism. Back then, they didn't really call it Judaism. Judaism, remember, is a word coming from the tribe of Judah, which is what most of us are from. And by the way, isn't it interesting in this day and age that a lot of people are getting their DNA checked, and a lot of people are having a little bit, they're seeing that they have a lot of bit of Hebrew in them, right? We've talked about the fact that the 10 tribes, broke away from the in the northern kingdom from the southern kingdom, and they reverted to idolatry, and they didn't have the strength of Hashem. So when the Assyrians attacked, they won and they spread them around, so they couldn't get together and maybe form a revolt, and they were lost. They were lost. Their genes were mingled with the general population. Well, we've talked about them coming back, and maybe this is the way it happens. People start discovering that they have some Jewish ancestry, and well, lo and behold, we got the 10 tribes coming back. So back then, God tells Moses and Aaron, or tells Moses to tell Aaron, that the 10th day of the 7th month is going to be a day of atonement. It's going to be a day when you afflict yourselves. Now, the name of the portion is Acherei Mot, and it starts out by saying after the death, Acherei, after Mot, the deaths of Nadav and Abihu. We're going to teach you how to do atonement every year, how the high priest is going to do that. And it goes through the procedure where the high priest takes the goats and by lot decides which one's going out to the wilderness, which one's going to be offered. But first, let's look at the name of this portion, Acherei Mot. Why start out a portion that says after the death of Nadav and Abihu? The idea that the sages connect is that when the death of a righteous person, and Nadav and Abihu might have made a fatal mistake, but ultimately they were righteous people. They were in line in succession to be the high priests. They were from a very important lineage. They were sons of Aaron. They were from the tribe of Levi. They were in the clan that would be the priestly clan. So there was some righteousness to them. And the sages say that when the connection between the death of these two guys and the discussion of how we're going to do the Day of Atonement shows that when righteous people die, it serves to atone sins, not just their sins, but also for the community. It's kind of like a sacrifice. Now, today, when we do Yom Kippur, when we do this, when we afflict ourselves, that's the commandment. And the sages say, okay, no food, no water, no pleasure for 26 hours. The body can handle it. If it can't, you're excused. Absolutely. No questions asked because you live by the Torah. That's the idea. So one rabbi said that, when you're fasting, what are you doing? You're burning off some of your own body fat, right? Isn't that sort of an offering? Because what did they do back then? They offered or sacrificed, let's call it what it is. They sacrificed animals. And today it's taken on a different form. Today, instead of offerings and sacrifices, we do prayers. That's the way we do this. I've mentioned this before that I think when the third temple is built, it's going to be a big synagogue. I know there's going to be a lot of blowback from the current thinking of Judaism in Israel right now, but those days have passed. So what Aaron would do is he would take two goats as per the commandment. He would draw lots, which one gets to be the offering, which one goes out into the wilderness. And there's some discussion in the Talmud that after a time, when they sent the goat out to the wilderness, they threw it off. That too was an offering. They threw it off a cliff, made sure it died. Barbaric, yes, but that's what they did back then. And he would first go into the Holy of Holies, the inner sanctum of the tabernacle, and later on the temple. And the priest would first have to offer a bull, his own sacrifice for he and his family. Some people think that there were two sacrifices, one for him, one for his family. The Torah says one for him and his family. Again, interpretation. Then he would come out with the goats, and one goat would serve as the offering to alleviate the sins of the people. And the other goat, of course, the sins are cast on the goat. It's sent away. That's where we get the term scapegoat. And people, they're fasting. They're still fasting. But at the end, they blow the shofar, and everything is forgiven, and they go on for another year. Seems actually kind of simple. But, rabbinically, a lot of new things have been mandated. Like you need to apologize to people. God understands. All right, you messed up. I get it, but you got to go to people. We interact with each other. You got to go to people, and you got to say I'm sorry. You got to suck it up, and you got to eat. I guess I don't know if they still use this term. You got to eat humble pie, but you got to apologize to people. You got to validate them. That's what it's all about. That's what makes Judaism such a humanistic reaction. You don't just pray to God and say, "Okay, I'm done." No, you've got to go out. We interact with each other, and that's where your emphasis. That's part of where your emphasis needs to be, right? The Ten Commandments. One tablet was about God's commandments. Don't take God's name in vain, no false gods. The other one was about people. No stealing, no murder. Don't covet other people, don't gossip. See? So, all right, Shabbat Shalom, and thank you for listening, and we will see you next time.